Hello YouTube and welcome to Prime Productions. I'm a new YouTube channel, so bear with me as I figure things out. So, just to let you guys know, I have been seeing your comments on suggestions for new top 5 videos, and I'm looking into doing them. But I also don't want to lock myself into doing one thing here on YouTube. Rest assured your comments are being read, and I will look into suggestions moving forward. But I also have some ideas for things you viewers might not have thought about. Case in point, the Pathfinder2e Remaster has put out a lot of changes, and some of those changes are minor and were overshadowed by bigger changes. Of course, we all know that the traditional 8 schools of wizardly magic has been traded in for a different system and that the witch class was overhauled, as well as many other changes. But today I'd like to focus on smaller changes that got less attention. But before we get started with the actual list, you know me, I have to have at least one honorable mention. This honorable mention is actually a lore change, but the rest of the changes on the actual list will be a mechanics change, so don't worry. So you may have heard that one of the major changes in Pathfinder 2e is that Pathfinder got rid of drow, and this is true, but only kind of. Pre-remaster, drow were evil, gray-purple skinned elves that lived in the underground. Now, drow are very closely associated with Dungeons & Dragons, so when Pathfinder Remaster decided to put some distance between themselves and D&D, they decided that drow were too closely associated with Dungeons & Dragons, so they dropped them. But only sort of. You see, there's another type of elf called cavern elves, and they are like the drow in that they can see in the dark. So, according to James Jacobs, the creative director for Pathfinder, cavern elves, now called Ayendalar elves, have taken the place of drow. They still live underground and basically have the same backstory that the drow used to have, only now they aren't universally evil. It's important to note that the pre-remaster Pathfinder drow were already moving away from the universally evil shtick anyway. There's even an officially published pre-remaster adventure path where a group of pretty chill drow show up and can help out the heroes. I'm not sure what skin color these new Ayendalar elves have, but I suppose there's nothing stopping you from making it gray-purple like the drow of old. I'll link the James Jacob comment in the description below. So yes, there is still a society of underground elves that exists in Pathfinder 2e after the remaster. They just have a different name and are not universally evil. Anyone interested in playing one can just play an elf with the Cavern Elf heritage. You can even make a half-drow by making a human, taking the Ayuvaran or half-elf versatile heritage, and then the Elf Atavism feat for Cavern Elf. Okay, after untangling that mess, the rest should be relatively easy. Here are the top 5 rules changes you probably missed in the Pathfinder 2e Remaster. Number 5, Ancestry lore feats. So this one takes a second to set up. There is a series of first level Ancestry feats in several Ancestries that gives the player who takes them 3 skills. 2 normal skills and a lore skill related to their ancestry. For example, before the remaster, the Elven lore Ancestry feat gave you the skills Arcana and Nature, as well as the Elven lore skill. I know, it's confusing that the Ancestry feat and the skill are named the same thing. Paizo probably could have renamed the feat something like Elven Cultural Heritage or something, but you get the picture. The remaster changes things up by giving you 2 skills and the skill feat additional lore, which has to be used for your ancestry lore. Now, as a reminder, additional lore gives you a lore skill that automatically upgrades to expert at 3, master at 7, and then legendary at 15. Now, all of this is to say that after the remaster, the ancestry lore feat gives you free upgrades to your ancestry lore skill as you level up without you having to spend additional resources. It just happens automatically. Now, in some games this may be useless, but for games like Gatewalkers, which deals heavily with elves, or Sky King's Tomb, which deals heavily with dwarves, this could be really helpful. And speaking of level 1 ancestry feats based on a cultural heritage, we actually have another. Number 4, Ancestry Weapon Familiarity feats. Ancestry Weapon Familiarity feats are feats that represent your character training in their childhood weapons common to their culture. The old way these feats would work is that you would become trained in a set of weapons, and then you gained access to weapons common to your ancestry, and that those weapons became 1 degree of complexity less complex for your proficiency. I know that's confusing, so here's an example. Dwarven weapon familiarity makes you proficient in a set of common weapons, and all martial dwarf weapons are considered simple for you, and all advanced dwarf weapons become martial. This becomes problematic because all classes get a bump to at least expert in simple weapons, and some go up to master. But for the Ancestry proficiency, you only gain training in ancestral weapons. To demonstrate, let's continue the example. Let's take a dwarf witch before the remaster. She's proficient in simple weapons and automatically goes to expert at 11. She takes the dwarf weapon familiarity feat because she wants to use a warhammer, and the feat gives her training in battle axe, pick, and warhammer. However, she never gets to expert with any of those weapons later down the line, unless she takes another feat. However, if she picked up the, say, longhammer, a weapon with the dwarf trait, it is then considered simple in her hands because it's a martial weapon with the dwarf tag, and that becomes expert because she becomes expert in all simple weapons. See how confusing that is? The new remaster feat makes it much easier and much more simple. Now, all normal weapons and weapons with the dwarf trait reduce in one step of complexity, meaning the pick, warhammer, and battle axe are considered simple weapons in your hand, along with the martial dwarf weapons. A lot easier. But wait, there's more! The feat also gives you automatic critical specialization in the Ancestry weapons as soon as you hit level 5. This means when you critically hit with said weapons, you get a bonus depending on that weapon type. This is actually really great, as a lot of fighting-based classes don't get critical specialization or only get a conditional version of it. Monks don't get it at all, Maguses don't get it unless they take one specific feat, fighters only get critical specialization in the weapon group that they're good with, and rangers only get it if they're attacking their hunted prey. But with one feat, you can pick up critical specialization in a bunch of weapons all at once. And it works all the time. Really, I think this feat has come up a lot from the pre-remaster days. Number 3, weapon proficiency and armor proficiency feats. Okay, this one's a tie, but it's really simple. Pre-remaster, the feats armor training and weapon training gave you weapon and armor training only. That's it, meaning you didn't get to expert in them. Now, the armor proficiency feat automatically upgrades to expert at 13, and weapons automatically upgrade to expert at 11. Now, this isn't great for fighty type characters, but it is great for spellcasters who normally only get up to expert in weapons and armor anyway. Now it's a lot easier to have that wizard running around in full plate. A simple and easy change, but a great one for all those spellcasters that would like to up their defenses. Number 2, gang up. You know what no one was saying? Gang up needs to be better. This level 6 rogue feat was already treated by many as a must-have feat for any rogue. Gang up, for those who don't know, is a feat that lets you treat an enemy as flanked if one of your friends is just near the enemy. You don't have to be on opposite sides. This is great for rogues who get to deal bonus damage to flanked enemies. Now, all you need is a friend nearby. You don't have to be in the exact right position. Well, the remaster made this feat better anyway. Now you treat the enemy as flanked if a friend is near, and your friend does too! This helps your friend out because flanked enemies receive a penalty to AC, making them easier to hit. Not only does this help out your friend, it also helps out you because it's a bigger incentive for your friends to get up and flank. I have no idea who thought this feat needed to be better, but obviously somebody did. Number 1, crafting. Okay, so I've talked about this on this channel before, but it bears repeating. The old crafting rules were kinda garbage and very few people used them. Now, the ins and outs of the old crafting rules are a bit complex and I don't want to go over them in detail right now, but here's the big takeaway. Pre-remaster, to craft something, you needed the formula for the thing, and then it took 4 days to make it. And that's if you succeeded on the crafting check. And at that point, making it costs the same as buying it. Then for every day afterwards that you spend on crafting, you could try to reduce down the cost to a minimum of half of what it was worth. But that required you to buy the crafting formula, which wasn't cheap, and spend days, maybe weeks, crafting something, and most adventurers don't have that kind of time. The new crafting rules are much the same, just more forgiving, and thus more enticing to a player. Now you don't need the formula for any item so long as it's common, and it only takes 2 days for the base crafting. And if you do happen to have the formula, it only takes 1 day for the crafting. Not requiring the formulas is such a relief. In my top 5 items video, I related how, in one campaign, our party was able to make winter outfits when we unexpectedly found ourselves in the frozen north, even though we didn't have the formula for those items. Honestly, this is just a great rules change, especially the part about not needing the formula. It just gives the players more options. Do you want to make a new weapon? All you need are the appropriate tools in a few days. Does your champion want their full plate mail that they couldn't afford at level 1? No problem, they can smith one even if they're in a small town that has no plate mail for sale. They just need the time on a forge. Well, that's all for today. This is just a fun little video where I wanted to point out some of the rules changes that I haven't seen a lot of people highlighting. If you found this video useful, or if you have other remaster rule changes that you haven't seen others talk about, leave a comment below. Let's get a conversation going. If you like this channel and want to see it grow, please like and subscribe. That tells not only me, but also YouTube that you want to see more of my kind of content. Until then, thank you, good luck, and happy gaming.